The full version of this book, Dragon Queen Scarlet Rain, is available for purchase in both ebook and paperback versions on Amazon. Dragon Queen, Chapter 17, Downed Dragon. Baveri gave a small smile when Aelwyn walked in. She and Delku sat at the back of the tent at a very low table. Baveri motioned Aelwyn to sit on a cushion at the head of it. Aelwyn noticed a light pink streak in Baveri's long black hair, and a dark orange one in Delku's. Jewels matching their respective streaks graced the similar rings they wore. I wonder what minerals their scales are made of, not to mention they're wearing rings instead of necklaces. Could it be because they're married? Do shift gems act as stones for wedding rings? Once Aelwyn sat, Baveri poured her a cup of tea. Aelwyn took a few small sips and nodded in approval, setting her sandwich down on a small plate. Really, she didn't care for tea at all, but she didn't want to be rude. I hope you're feeling better, Baveri said. You were so distant yesterday. I was afraid that we had said too much. Her brows lowered in concern. Aelwyn hugged herself tightly. I do feel better. Thank you for thinking of me. Delku rubbed his thin beard in contemplation. There is much for us to discuss today, especially in regards to rekindling the rebellion and taking back your kingdom. If you do not feel comfortable talking about it now, we can do this another day. Aelwyn stared into space. We're going to have to talk about Mother and Father, too. She sighed. It's fine. This is an urgent matter. I feel it must be discussed, no matter my feelings on the subject. Baveri nodded, a ghost of a smile appearing on her lips. I notice whenever you become serious, your words take on a grandeur sense of formality, in a matter befitting a queen. Aelwyn looked up. Queen? Yes, you are a queen now after all. Baveri patted her shoulder. And a great ruler you shall become. Aelwyn's eyes glazed over. Of course. She tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ears. So, where do we start? Baveri rolled out a map across the middle of the table. It depicted the entirety of the Evenor kingdom, with specific cities marked in varying colors. Delku tapped his cane on the ground. Most of the former leaders of the rebellion were the lords and ladies of various regions of the kingdom, who despised Lyriel for forcibly taking over their land and ruling them as puppets. Even now they are disgusted with how their people are treated. Thus, we discreetly reached out to them years ago and set up the foundations of our uprising. However, as you know, many of them were found out, and they willingly gave up their memories of the rebellion in order to protect themselves and the Koana. If we wish to take the country back, we need their support. Thus, we must give them back their memories. Delku pressed a hand to the ground, and slowly a chest rose up from the dirt right beside the table. Baveri opened it, revealing a set of 5 glass balls glowing with bolts of electricity crackling within them. Each was labeled with a name. These are their memories? Aelwyn asked breathlessly. Baveri nodded. She delicately touched a black one marked with the name Riche Cheval. Memories are simply sparks of electricity running through our brains in certain patterns, she explained. These glass balls are specifically designed to magically extract the desired memories from the brain and store them. They can be only accessed by the creature they were taken from. Wow! Aelwyn leaned over the table for a closer look. The name on the last orb, a purple one, caught her eye. Sorry? Sorry? Delku echoed. Yes, she was one of the leaders. She previously governed a tribe of gypsy humans and centaurs. However, once some of her memories were taken, she was interrogated by Lyriel's witches and was never heard from again. She simply vanished. Aelwyn's hand rose to her chest. Was she a big, muscular woman with dark skin, black hair? Why, yes, Delku remarked in surprise. How in the world did you know? I've seen her, Aelwyn exclaimed in excitement. She works at the Violet Hand Circus. That's wonderful, Baveri exclaimed in her soft voice. Do you know where she is currently? Aelwyn began to nod, but then stopped and let it morph into a headshake. No, actually. Did Kotuya tell you about what happened with Violet Hand? Oh, yes, I see. That makes things complicated. Baveri bit her lip. At least we have a lead. That is much better than nothing. Thank you, Aelwyn. Sari was my friend, and I miss her greatly. Aelwyn tried to imagine the big buff Sari being friends with the diminutive gentle Baveri. The image was a strange one. Aelwyn took a bite out of her sandwich. So I'm assuming our main quest is to travel to these regions and restore the memories of these people to recruit them back to our cause? Then we can build up an army to fight back the dragons? But I thought that much of the kingdom had been destroyed already. How is it possible there are enough soldiers fit to fight? Despite what you may have heard, Surubi City is not the only one that is still standing, Delku said. Major cities all over the country still remain intact, though under intense sieges. It is only unprotected small villages and towns that are being razed. That doesn't make sense. How, then, did the capital fall? It is one of the largest cities in the nation. Aelwyn's eyebrows furrowed. Delku curled his fingers around his cane. We do not know. It has come to our attention that it may have been done on purpose. An inside job. Aelwyn almost choked on her sandwich. We suspect that Lyriel, for some reason, may have allowed the attack to happen, Delku continued. As of yet, we have no evidence or motive, but that is what we feel may be the case. Aelwyn pursed her lips. A moment of silence passed among the three shifters. There is something and it has been bothering me, Aelwyn said quietly. When I talked with Zarubia, she implied that my father may still be alive. Not only this, but at one point she said, Your mother will not be happy about this. As if she might still be living. Baveri gasped. Delku's mouth opened in shock. Aelwyn stumbled on. I don't know for sure if I heard her correctly. We were trying to escape and things were very hectic. Delku slammed a fist on the table, sending the teacups rattling. He let out a frustrated sigh and turned away. Aelwyn shrunk back. Like I said, I don't know for sure. Baveri set a hand on Aelwyn's knee. It's all right. Thank you for telling us. This is just surprising news. What can you tell us about your father? We have little to no information on him. Aelwyn thought back to her dad's smiling face, her eyes hooded while she fingered her necklace. He was very kind and gentle. Whenever he saw me, he always wanted to make me laugh. He taught me the virtues of being a ruler and being a perfect queen. He was my friend. But as I got older, I realized that sometimes he smiled even when he didn't feel like it. Sometimes he would be looking out a window as if longing for something. He looked so sad. Then he would turn his head and look at me and put on a mask of joy. He would sing me songs sometimes. His favorite instrument was the piano. Mother didn't like it when he sang. She thought singing was a waste of time. I always thought this was strange, since I remember her singing to me when I was very young. Aelwyn paused, grabbing the smooth pyrope stone at her neck. I loved my mother, too. She taught me to read and write, and sometimes would take me out for walks in the gardens. She and Father never really got along, though. They had separate bedrooms, and... Aelwyn stopped. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. No, it is fine. Please keep going, Baveri commented, her fingers thoughtfully twirling a spoon in her teacup. Well, there was this one time when I overheard Father sing about a white deer. Aelwyn gasped as memories came flooding back and realization hit her. Father! He knew about Arya! Perhaps he was never on Mother's side to begin with. And you say he could still be alive? Sparks of interest lit in Delku's voice. Yes! In fact, I've had dreams where he's journeying through a forest, but strange wolves made of shadow tear at him. Dad! Gerald burst into the tent. There's a dragon outside the waterfall entrance. He's not one of ours. It's all right. Just tell Kara not to let anyone exit for a while, Delku said calmly. No, it's not like that. His wings are torn up, and one of his legs seems to be broken. He can't move. Gerald glanced at Aelwyn. What is Kara doing about it? Baveri asked. She wants to, put him out of his misery. That's why I came. Baveri and Aelwyn both leapt to their feet. For heaven's sakes! Baveri cried, walking up to her son. Take me to her! Gerald led Baveri and the curious Aelwyn into the waterfall. Baveri sang a small tune in her soft voice. the same one Gerald had played on his violin. Kara materialized before them, peeking around the edge of the waterfall. She looked behind her to see the group. "Hey," she scoffed. "Looks like Kotuya brought the whole gang. Anyway, take a look." She motioned for the group to peek outside. The heavily wooded area was almost the same as when Aelwyn had first landed and entered the waterfall. However, now the broken form of a green dragon with short horns in a tiny frame lay at the edge of the stream, his warm blood mixing with the cool water. Aelwyn inwardly gasped. "He's so small," she noted in compassion. "Kotuyo said you planned to kill him. He is a child," Baveri huffed, her tone evolving from that of a delicate woman to a stern mother. "Whoa, hey, it was a joke," Kara sneered. "The kid doesn't get sarcasm." "Wow, yeah, I totally don't get sarcasm," Gerald said sarcastically. "And that definitely isn't due to the fact that everything you say is in the same not caring tone." "Shut up, you little smartat," Baveri shushed them both. In normal circumstances, Aelwyn would have laughed at this, but now her eyes and ears were attuned to the sight of the little dragon. His heavy breathing and glazed-over eyes brought forth the image of her first transformation. Her brows lowered in thought when she noticed arrows sticking out of the membranes of his wings. Parts of his wings were torn to bits, while others were crushed. His mouth was moving like he was trying to cry out, but the pounding of the waterfall drowned it out. His eyes stared into the forest, unfocused. Baveri reviewed the situation. "I'll use a spell to quickly send him into unconsciousness. Then we can bring him into the village, heal him, and convince him to join our side. He could be a great asset to our cause. Besides, we can't leave the poor child to die." As the family members continued to make whispered plans, Aelwyn stepped out from behind the water. They whipped their heads to look at her, and Kara ordered her to stop and get back in. Aelwyn ignored her. Instead, she closed her eyes and willed herself to transform. Her hands and feet turned into paws, nose and mouth elongated into a snout, and a set of wings and a tail branched out from her back. Her clothes dissipated and shot into the gem at her neck. She dropped down to all fours and slowly padded towards the emerald dragon. When she came toward him, his eyes whipped to look at her. Gently, she touched his shoulder. He opened his mouth to speak, tears welling in his eyes. "Please help," he said, gulping down air. "The humans shot me. I crashed to the ground." His voice was indeed that of a young boy. Aelwyn blinked back tears. "Don't worry, I'll help you," she said, looking over his injuries. "Can you stand at all? You could lean on me. I'll help you get to our encampment." He shook his head. "My front leg, it broke when I fell." He closed his eyes. "It hurts so much." His voice broke into a mixture of tears and whimpers. It was then that Aelwyn noticed the blood caked around his jaw and claws. From the corner of her eye, she saw Baveri stepping out from behind the waterfall. Picking up her skirts, she quietly walked up behind the dragon. "What were you doing before you were shot down?" Aelwyn asked. A dark feeling rose in the pit of her stomach. "I was killing them," the young dragon seethed. "The humans in the village. I tore them to pieces. Please, I can help you. I can fight too. I've proved I can kill them. Don't let me die." Aelwyn froze. Her heartbeat quickened. "He's a murderer. He's so young, yet he's already killed people. How could this be?" Her thoughts jumbled over one another. Baveri was almost to him. Her hand was raised over her head, a magic spell brewing over her palm. Before she could touch his head and send him into unconsciousness, a surge of both sorrow and anger swept through Aelwyn's body. "Do not worry. I will help you, even though you do not deserve it." Before the young dragon's eyes, she turned back into a human. His eyes widened in sheer terror. Then Baveri's hand came down onto his head, and with a swirl of magic, he was rendered unconscious. The full version of this book, Dragon Queen Scarlet Rain, is available for purchase in both ebook and paperback versions on Amazon.